I'm in the tour truck in Augusta. It's the week of the Masters, and I am with the wedge maker to the stars, Aaron Dill. So much to talk about this week about setups, wedges. Tell me how busy you've been in the early going.
Today is pretty soft. It's a pretty rainy day, so we have some players asking questions whether or not this rain, this much moisture is going to affect the golf course. I tend to believe that this place does maybe some of the best work in making it tournament ready when the tournament starts. So most of the advice I'm giving players is let's play the wedges we normally play that got us here. Let's dance with the girl we brought, and let our skills, do the talking when the tournament begins.
And on a golf course, as you say, that can change so quickly. The forecast is for cooler temperatures and sun. This golf course could dry out fairly quickly. Is it possible that somebody could make a wedge change as the week progresses, or would you just assume they stay with the same equipment, as you say, that they brought in?
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible. That's the beauty about having these resources, is we can help players just slowly prepare for the week. We might find that some guys are playing a softer condition 60 for the week, the first few days. And as that weekend rolls around and conditions firm up, we then go back to what we know, T grinds, L grinds, A's, things that fit nicely with this tighter, firmer turf here at Augusta National.
And in terms of the majority, what are you seeing most in terms of the wedges that guys are going to ultimately play the early part of this week?
Well, I would suspect most guys are going to play what they normally play.
Yeah.
The bunkers are going to be a little firmer. They're obviously very moist underneath. But this place has some of the tightest, most beautiful turf you can ever go on. For all of us here, I mean, we all dream about walking in the fairways and walking around the greens, but we don't have that option. And we have to take the player's word for it.
Right.
And oftentimes that's a big part of this role, is calling these guys over, texting. We're seeing them on the grounds and saying, what's the course like? Because I really don't know. They have a much better idea.
Right.
And you've been out here for so long. You've been on this golf course so many times. You know better than anybody. What are some things that players cannot do here?
Well, I think short siding is particularly difficult. It's such a difficult golf course to get the ball up and down should you, give yourself not enough room to work with. And with these flags, we're likely to see 4 and 5 from the edges, and with the runoffs, it's particularly difficult to get the ball up and down. And let's face it, they're going to be more nervous certainly in the early going this week than they will be the remainder of the year, or certainly earlier this spring. So I think that plays into, shots around the green, and ultimately what you don't want to leave yourself. You want to, let's hit it in the middle of the green. Let's leave ourselves, an uphill putt, all the things you can do to make life easier for yourself at Augusta National. But you're exactly right. I think sometimes the players get a little bit, off kilter, if you will, and leave themselves with misses that they ultimately don't want to deal with.
Yeah. Now, these bunkers are maybe some of the most beautiful bunkers.
Yeah.
But it's a very unique style of sand. I mean, I think when we spend a lot of our time in Florida, the sand on the Florida stretch of golf courses is very coarse, different colors and textures. It does, encourage a lot of players to test bounces. But when you come here, this is so fine and powdery, and then you add moisture on top of that. What are players going to experience when they get into these bunkers with this type of sand, with this much moisture?
It's a great question. I think a lot of it depends on how they react to this rain that we're getting here on Monday. I mean, certainly I feel like they're likely to be that much more successful should the sand become compacted because of the rain. But if the club decides to, in a sense, brush up the sand, it becomes really difficult to generate any kind of spin, certainly from a greenside bunker, and can make the shots from the fairway bunkers pretty penal as well.
So outside of, say, 30 yards, how much grain do players typically feel out here? I mean, we know that it's overseeded a little bit, I believe, and it is Bermuda. But what sort of feels are players going to have, or grain are they going to experience playing this week at Augusta National?
It's a great question. A lot of it comes down to which way they choose to mow it. And I was on the golf course a little bit the last couple of days, and it certainly appeared as though most everything will be into the grain, which I don't need to tell you, certainly creates a challenge for the players. It certainly will around the greens in terms of, not making something of a quality strike. But to your point about the shots inside of 30 yards, I think that you have to be absolutely on the money in terms of the time they spend with you, the clubs you're utilizing to be as successful as you can. We talk so much at majors, and particularly at the Masters, about fresh grooves. If a player came in here with some wedges that were 2 or 3 months old and weren't particularly fresh at all in terms of the grooves, how would you handle that? Would you make a suggestion, or do you feel like he would lose anything in terms of effectiveness ultimately playing Thursday through Sunday?
There's potential that spin being gone will lose control. So that's the ultimate goal, is how do I control my Pro V1? How
Yeah.
do I do it with my wedges? And with that much loft, it's a very oblique strut. The ball and the face are not working efficiently together, so it's very important that you have sharp, fresh grooves to control the way that golf ball is moving towards the target. I typically advise most players to start considering a change in a 60 every 6 weeks. I think it's a really intelligent way to make sure we have control of our golf ball, and so we're constantly refreshing those lofts. Here this week, we know today's a little soft, but I know the rest of the week's going to be beautiful. We know it's going to firm up, and I'd love to make sure that these players have those sharp, fresh grooves when that golf course shift happens, and they feel like they're comfortable and confident, can't control their Titleist golf ball.
That's fascinating. We just talked to AD, and now we're here with JJ. JJ, it's Masters Week. So much to take in, so much to think over, certainly from y'all's standpoint here in the Titleist truck. Let's just go through the back nine and just talk about a few of the shots that these guys have to play and certain ways that they may have to turn it to get the job done, starting with the tee shot on 10. A lot of guys like to turn the ball over there, make that fairway as big as they possibly can, move it out, off the tee as far as they possibly can. What would you do for a player that maybe isn't as comfortable hitting the ball from right to left to help them with that tee shot this week?
Yeah, obviously a challenging tee shot, but if you can get it moving, we have players like a JT Poston looking at a GT 280, so that mini driver is kind of that opening up that avenue where we can build that as a little bit draw bias and take a golf club that he's going to use off the tee, but we want it to kind of push down there, but not quite as much as a driver. Really try to take advantage of some technology on a hole like that.
We've got quite a bit of rain this week. None of us know. Certainly this golf course has the ability to firm up faster than most, maybe any. But 11 is the most relentless par 4 I think anywhere in golf, and certainly a lot of distance can be an incredible positive off that tee. Because of the softer conditions earlier in the week, would you possibly have a guy come in here looking for a little extra pop or to keep the ball a little longer in the air for a tee shot on 11?
Yeah, sometimes we have that. I think what we're really looking for, like a Wyndham Clark on a hole like that, is he was just really looking to maximize the launch to spin ratio. So we made some tweaks to his GT3 driver to really take advantage, and then added in a T200 5-iron for a little extra elevation on those long second shots.
Beautiful. The 12th, Golden Bell. There's so much to talk about there. Certainly the wind that just can't make up its mind. I always thought to myself, the player can be really successful there in terms of just flighting the ball down, whether you're feeling wind, whether you're not. As long as you flighted it a little more than your typical trajectory, I felt like you were going to be more successful on that hole, off that tee. If a guy came in here looking to make something of a shaft change or an adjustment in terms of flighting the ball a little bit this week, what would you have them do?
I think the big thing we see on a hole like 12 is trust. That's that golf shot where you really want to feel in control of your Pro V1 and really take advantage of the really good aerodynamics, because I think the one thing you probably see on that tee is if you're confident in the shot, you're going to come away with a 2 or a 3. It's when you're indecisive that problems come into play.
13, the tee shot on 13 has changed so much. They bought some additional property from Augusta Country Club a few years ago, and now the tee shot at 13 requires a distance of at least 285 yards off the tee. Do you find that the mini drivers are becoming particularly popular because of that tee shot there?
I think that's definitely one of those opportunities there, because like the GT 280 has 13 degrees of loft versus a lot of our drivers, they're in that 9-10 degree. So on some of those up the hill shots, it's allowing them to hit that little right to left shape, but with a little more elevation.
And there's so many side hill lies here, particularly the second shot on 13. But does that affect how guys have their clubs set up for this week, or would you recommend they go in there with the loft and lies as they typically do?
We really want to make sure their lofts and lies are correct. So this morning, early in the week, lots of loft lie checks. We have on our T-Series irons the variable bounce sole, so we're trying to make sure that sole is going to work on lots of different lies, ball above my feet, ball below my feet, but we're going to get those and make sure they're perfectly on spec for the week.
Okay, 14 is a pretty straight ahead par 4. 15 to me is an amazing hole, amazing risk reward. You're going to see guys pump it out there as far as they can and ultimately stand on the top of the hill and make one of the tougher club selections anywhere in the game. You deal with these guys week in, week out, and their distance control to me is unbelievable, and no hole out here is it more important than that second shot into 15. Do you monitor, with the data that you guys ultimately take here, what these guys are doing in terms of how far they're flying the ball, just to make sure everything's consistent? As you say, you're checking the lofts and lies this week for sure.
100%. And there's that opportunity where peak height, descent angle matter a lot. So whether it's a 7-wood or GT hybrid, with Tom Kim, is really making sure if you have that lie that's not perfect, that we're still be able to create elevation and create some stopping power. It's really when that one get a little thin on the face and it gets going a little bit hot,
right,
bad things come in play.
That's very, very well put. 16 is a dynamic par 3. There's a couple of flags you can absolutely get after. We'll see it on Sunday with the ball spinning down the hill. We're likely to see a hole-in-one. But I always thought the most underrated hole location on this golf course is back right on 16. Do you feel like guys that are faders of the ball have an advantage there over the guys that ultimately want to turn one into that back right hole location?
Yeah, I think when we have a cutter in that situation, is they're often creating a little more spin. So any of our draw players really want to, again, make sure that we have enough height coming out of their irons so that if they're going to hit into that back right hole location, that the ball's still going to land softly. Because you get in some of those tricky ones, if it's coming in the wrong way, we really need the descent angle to be something that's going to be accepted into the green.
Wow, that's really well said. Okay, 17's a straightaway par 4. It's right there in front of you. You can't go over that green. That's one of the 10 cardinal rules, I feel like, on this golf course. And then you ultimately get to 18. Certainly moves from left to right. We talked earlier about the 10th hole and turning it right to left. Now we're going the other way. Do you feel like with the fairway bunkers out there at about 305 that that's a good opportunity for a lot of these guys to come and see you relative to the mini driver?
Yeah, I think there's a few players that are looking at. Other ones are like JT. He has a 46 and a 45-inch driver. 45-inch driver is probably going to come into play this week because he's able to feel like he can flight that right off the bunker, hit his left to right shot, and really set himself up for that approach shot into 18.
So many high ball hitters have had so much success here over the years. Certainly getting at those back left and right hole locations on 18, you want to get the ball way up in the air so we can get the ball stopped on those back patios, if you will. Would you ever recommend a shaft change coming into the Masters for a guy to get the ball more up in the air that had something of a lower flight that you thought might be at a disadvantage?
We're never going to try to do that shaft change, but we may do a head change. Is that center of gravity is going to just help launch that ball up in the air rather than create something that feels different, loads different. So if you look at the field in Titleist irons, about 80% of those players have more than one iron type in the bag. If we look at JT, he has 3 different iron types in his bag. 4-iron in the 200, 5-iron T100, and then blades in a short iron. So trying to really give him launch help at the top end of his bag as he transitions to his woods.
Wow, that's fantastic.